Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Charity Village webinar. We are going to get started in just a moment. We just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to join us before we begin the session. We have people joining us from across the country today, which is excellent. It's so nice to have all of you here. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to today's Charity Village webinar. My name is Mercedes, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Specialist with Charity Village. As we are gathering here on a virtual platform, it is important to acknowledge that each of us is joining this webinar from the ancestral or unceded lands of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people. As a settler on this land, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe, which includes the Ojibwe of Fort William First Nation. For those who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you are looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is a great place to start. We also have a ton of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. Before we start today's webinar, I would like to quickly run through some housekeeping items. You may have noticed when you joined the webinar that you were automatically put on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants in today's session, it is important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so that everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the Zoom control panel. Look for that at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we will do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We will do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible, but in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email tomorrow. So if you get called away or disconnected, you will still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I would like to welcome our presenter for today, David Mboma from DonorPerfect. Welcome, David.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. Hi and welcome everyone to this webinar on cleaner data for better results. Essentially how to maintain a healthy nonprofit CRM or a healthy nonprofit database. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land where this webinar is taking place. I usually live in Montreal and work from there, but which is the traditional land of the Mohawk people. But today, this webinar, the event is hosted in King of Prussia in Pennsylvania, which is the traditional and ancestral lands of the Lenape people. And as for me, my name is David. I am a business development representative here at DonorPerfect, DonorPerfect Canada, and former support agent. So my role really is to help spread the good news about DonorPerfect and help you take a step forward towards a system that will streamline your donor management operation. As Mayor said, there will be a recording sent out by email, so worry not if you miss some bits from there and there, or if you have to leave the webinar. And of course, if you have any questions, submit them. You can also include your email and the organization you're with, and it will be our pleasure to follow up with you after this webinar ends. All right, so let's go into it. So why clean data matters? So that's a very valid question. In the world of data tracking, processing, and analyzing data, working with clean data is of the utmost importance. So a simple example is going back to a record in DonorPerfect and wondering why half of the information is missing and why the other half has been entered in a way that no one can read. It's very frustrating if you ask me. And the clients that used to call me we're also frustrated about this. So we can already we think about the following scenario. Your executive director probably sees the data through a different lens compared to your development director or the volunteers that you're working with. So it's like everyone using the same map, but with a different perspective. So cleaning up your data really becomes a collaborative process that helps everyone in your nonprofit works better together. And it really helps to supercharge your fundraising efforts. So it's really from going to inconsistent data entry to having a clear and mapped out procedure that everyone follows, really a guide of some sorts. Um, so have any of you had this conversation with your team members already? I would be curious to know about that. Really, the goal today is to create a formalized document that will streamline that process. And if you're not a DonorPerfect client again and you want to learn more about this system, you can feel free to submit your question with your email, the organization you're with again, and we'll make sure to follow up on this. So again, the goal is to enable you to discuss this as a team internally and you'll be able to prepare your cleanup and eventually going back to this formalization process to avoid making these errors from the beginning so that everyone is happy. All right. And you might be wondering, why should you start to clean up your data now? I mean, it's really not a coincidence that we're hosting this now. You can already think that the year is about to end. I know it went really fast, but it's the case. And it means like things like Giving Tuesday is coming, the receiving season is coming, the 2025 planning is coming. You might get audited at some point as well. So trust me, you would rather much have a process in place now than later. And I remember my time in support when I was talking to clients who realized that they did not do the receiving preference per record correctly. We had to do a few global updates when January came and run a few reports to make sure that everything was okay before we hit that send receipt. It's not really a fun experience, and it's also one that is preventable if you adopt good practice now. And so how does clean data bring better results? I know it sounds like a daunting task, but stick with me. It's really crucial. Before the cleanup, you can already picture the following. You're working with messy data. What does that look like? Well, you're probably spending way too much time fixing mistakes. When you have to like reverse a payment because it was processed incorrectly. Um, and let's not even get started on how this affects your donors, right? So imagine your donors getting their name wrong, and you're bombarding them with duplicate emails that have typos. You want to avoid that. It's not a great look. The missing information as well, the duplication, just typos. It's really like trying to read a book with half of the page missing and the other half is in the wrong order. So that's really the situation you might be finding yourself before the actual cleanup. Once the cleanup comes, the solution, we've been doing this for so long that you'll get the best practice after this presentation. But essentially, good data habits. We're talking about getting those donor details right from the get-go, being consistent with how you actually record the information and do your gift entry. You'll be able to follow up properly with your donors, and you'll be able to keep track of every donor interaction. And of course, give your data a regular checkup, which will bring you to the end results of this process. Clean data will give you that edge in your fundraising. So your campaign you'll be able to hit the mark more often than not. You'll be able to onboard your new team members more easily, right? So they'll get up to speed in no time because of a clear data entry procedure. This will eliminate the improvisation part that I'm sure happens everywhere, unfortunately, but having a clear process in place will help you with that. And when it comes time to crunching the numbers and making decision, you'll actually be able to trust what you're looking at rather than having to second guess some of the stuff you're seeing on screen. or in your reports or in your Excel sheet. So again, clean data makes everything smoother. It makes happy donors, successful campaigns, and way fewer headaches for you. Your future self will really thank you for this. So let's go on with the first steps. So again, we've imagined a scenario. Probably most of you or some of you might have done this in the past, but imagine the organization you're with is hosting a gala where the attendees are encouraged to fill out a pledge card. The response will be varied. Some donors will be committed to open-ended monthly payments, while others they'll have a specified payment schedules. You'll have those who will write a few checks for the first month, and then they'll tell you, well, I'll send you the rest electronically. And then you'll have those who will use a DonorPerfect card reader to make a first payment and then go online afterwards if they learn more and about your organization and are satisfied with it. So it's really, this situation really illustrates the diversity in pledge commitments. Okay, so it really, and it also highlights the need for a flexible and thorough donor management system like DonorPerfect, of course. And it does because you'll be able to track and follow up on various type of pledge effectively. But it's also knowing how to enter the data correctly. It's one thing to receive multiple cards. How do you go about entering them in your system afterwards? So really what you want to do is avoid having to go back and fix the start date that was entered incorrectly, for instance, that prompted your donor to be charged twice before the actual date they wanted. That's a common error that we see. So we've explored how different members of the same organization will see how the data should be entered in the system. We've basically developed 4 different persona, and you'll be able to see what they see once they get that pledge card. We'll start with the first one. We have the strategist here. We can imagine Sarah here. I named her Sarah, but let's imagine Sarah, the development director. She might be looking at the pledge cards and think about how to categorize these pledges to set realistic goals for a future campaign. So essentially, she wants to know how many pledges are open-ended versus fixed term. What's the average pledge amount? She'll instruct her team to enter the data in a way that allows her to easily compare this gala's performance with other fundraising events, right? So she'll want you to enter the data in a way that makes these comparisons easy. She's also thinking ahead, emphasizing the importance of tracking task completion for follow-ups. And you're thinking, why? Well, it's because, as we all know, a pledge isn't truly secured until it's in the bank. Those of you who run reports in DonorPerfect knows this. There are ways to track who pledged versus who pledged and actually paid. So you want to know that information. And that's something that the strategist is thinking about when they see those pledge cards. The next persona would be the communicator. In this case, we have Jane. She's a communication manager. And she's the one who sees the pledge card as a story waiting to be told. So essentially, she's interested in the personal details. Did you get a note when that donor filled out that pledge card? Your donors, they actually care about your cause and your organization. So they will give you those letters, those notes saying how much their life has been impacted by your work, or someone who's actually beneficiated from your organization's mission or work. Do you keep those notes? Do you keep those letters? Jane, she wants to ensure that every piece of information that is entered needs to be entered accurately in the system so that she can really personalize the future communication that your organization will have with your donors. So she really asked the data team or the data entry team to flag any interesting comments or major gift. You can think of the flag system in DonorPerfect or the Smart Action that really can attribute a flag whenever a major gift is entered in the system. That can be done automatically. So again, Jane is really seeing those notes, those letters, as a potential to make a great impact stories for a potential newsletter. That's what she sees when she gets those pledge cards. The next persona here would be the administrator. So in this case, we have Mike. He's the database administrator. He will see the pledge card and have a totally different approach. He's really concerned about the consistency and the completeness of that card. So before the team starts entering the data, they will have to create a naming convention for the specific gala and ensures that everyone understand how to categorize the different types of pledges. You can think open-ended versus pledge with an amount versus single gift. Mike would also take this opportunity to retire some of the old event codes from the system to really keep things clean. So essentially, he meticulously checks that there is no critical detail that is missing when the data is being entered in the system. That's what he sees when he's getting those pledge cards. And the last persona here would be the networker. The networker can be seen as someone who's like the major gift officers. She will see, or he or she will see the pledge card as a network of connection. So they are particularly interested in who influenced whom to attend the gala and donate. That person will ask the data entry team to take note of any mention of personal connection or interest in major gift or matching program. So they'll want to ensure that the CRM can track mass communication with these donors, allowing them really to see who's engaging with those emails or social media posts or any other means of marketing technique that you're using. So this information will really help them to strategize their personal outreach and cultivate this larger gift, or really just improve a monthly giving program, for instance. So we can really see that each of those roles, they will see that pledge card differently. This is why emphasizing the importance of a comprehensive and flexible data entry process that really captures all of the necessary information to support your various organization needs. That's why it's really important. We want to make sure that every stakeholder in the organization can accomplish their task without having to redo the entire data entry part. So again, I would be curious if anyone here could relate to these roles or constraint that they bring. You can let us know, but it's really what we came up with in terms of you get a pledge cards, how is the data going to be entered and how will it be used going down the road. So if we go to the next slide, we'll start talking about the steps to having a comprehensive process, a process that will eliminate those potential errors that we mentioned earlier. It's divided in 5 steps. You can see them on the screen. Now it's really the time to talk about the standardized data entry procedure that everyone in your organization should follow, no matter their role. It's really a process that will keep a consistency alive and well. So whether you're a strategist, a communicator, the administrator, or the networker, or really the do-it-all person, because we know that in the nonprofit world, that's you have a lot of people that do everything. Following these steps will ensure that there is some sort of consistency and accuracy in your data management. Again, you'll have access to the checklist. We will make this available for you. And this is a recorded webinar. So again, if you're missing a part or if you're unsure, you'll be able to rewatch this presentation afterwards. And we're pretty sure that after following these steps, everyone in the organization will be able to contribute to maintaining a clean and useful database. Remember that good data habits makes everyone's job easier and effective and more effective. All right, so let's go to the step 1, the donor data. All right. So donor data entry. So in a way, this is where it all starts. We can picture this. You get a new donor form in your hands. What would be your first step? Well, you've guessed it. You're going to do a quick search in DonorPerfect, and you're going to search the database to make sure that this is not an existing record. Why? Well, you do not want to work with duplicated data. It will create consistency issue if that's not taken care of. Now the donor is new, there is no duplicate in the database. So what do you do when it comes to name and address and phone numbers? Really, you'll need to pick a format and stick to it. For example, if you're using 123 Main Street written ST instead of 123 Main Street with STREET, make sure to stick to that format. DonorPerfect, by the way, we have a service called DonorPerfect Address Updater powered by TrueGivers. It will allow you to do this, will do this automatically for you after an address change is submitted. It can even format the street to ST or the boulevard to BLD. Again, this can be automated in DonorPerfect. And those special labels, they're like a secret code in a way for segmentation. You can use them in a way that they'll make your life a lot easier. An example in DonorPerfect would be using the flag system. Using the flag system will allow you to attribute, I don't know, is that person a board member of the organization? You can apply the flag board member, and then you'll be able to run reports and filter on specifically who is a board member in my database and tailor your communication around that flag. When it comes to notes and restrictions, especially if it's sensitive donor information, you'll want to be able to set some security rules. Again, that can be done in DonorPerfect. Imagine that you only want certain staff member to be able to see a specific field in DonorPerfect. That can be done. So that your volunteers, for instance, do not have access to financial information if you do not want them to see that information. It really can be done. The field can be hidden depending on who's signed in the system. So really the goal here is to create records that are complete, accurate, and useful across every department. So taking extra care of this now will save you time and prevent issues down the line. We'll get into more details with the best practice afterwards. But if you have any questions again as we go along, submit them, and we'll be able to follow up at the end of the Q&A session. Right, so let's go to the next slide. Best practice for names. So let's go into the best practice. First and foremost, as mentioned earlier, when you add a new donor, what you want to do is always search through your existing records. So in DonorPerfect, this really translates to doing a quick search of the name or the organization that made that donation. It really might seem obvious, but it's really crucial. You need to do it. You want to make sure that you don't already have an history for this person or the organization that made that donation, because you want to avoid working with duplicate data. It can cause all sorts of problems down the line, and DonorPerfect will allow you to run reports, duplicate reports, when that's the case. So you'll be able to eliminate and merge these records afterwards. For couples, what we recommend doing is using the optional line field on the main screen of the record, or use a subcategory field within the main donor record to add the spouse or the partner's first and last name. This keeps the related information together, and it really makes it easier to manage the household giving. So imagine sending an email that says, "Dear John and Jane Smith," instead of "Dear Mr. Smith." It's really the power of data and the power of clean data in action. Okay. And for the organizational donors, so that can be a company, a foundation, another foundation, really not an individual, but a company. Try to find a specific contact at the business or the organization they're with. Make a note of their name and really create that separation. So you'll have one record for the organization and another record for the contact at this organization. And you'll be able to link them in DonorPerfect afterwards. It really gives you this personal touch. It can be invaluable for future communication and relationship building. Again, the goal is to really create a comprehensive and accurate record from the start. So if you apply this for names, you'll be good to go. And if we go to the next slide, for notes, when you're working with your database, remember that a subcategory field can be a powerful tool. Okay, so use it to identify the constituent affiliated with your organization. This could be things like volunteer or board member or event attendee. this information really helps you understand the full scope of your relationship with each donor. So then notes become another critical aspect of your donor records. But please do not add them however you see fit. Whenever you add a note in the system, it could be into a note field, a memo field, or any field that where you have to input text. Make sure that you include the dates and your initials. It might seem like a small detail, but it's incredibly helpful so that if anyone else in your team or the organization has any question about that note, they'll be able to know exactly who to reach out to for clarification. And the contact restriction, that would be the last best practice for notes. When you're marking these, always include a reason. It's really crucial because it will help you determine if the restriction is temporary or permanent. An example of this would be a donor that asks you not to be contacted during a specific month of the year. All right. In Canada, we have a lot of people that go overseas or down south to the US when the winter comes. So they might not want to receive a ton of mail during the winter. Make note of these restrictions. Um, you don't want to have an accumulation of contact, let's call them contact transaction. They might be, I don't know, climate conscious, and they might not want to get a ton of mail again when they come back to their main location or primary address. So really understanding the nature of these restrictions, it will ensure that you respect your donor's preference and eventually maintain that positive relationship with your donor. And now let's talk about how you can leverage that data. So good data entry, again, it's not just about record keeping, it's also about creating opportunities, right? So now you've entered name in a correct manner, you've entered notes in a correct manner, but what do you do with it? All right. So for a more effective in communication fundraising, one of the best way to leverage everything that we just mentioned, so all of that data, it's through personalization. Again, I use it in my day-to-day task when I'm writing email. I use a lot of merge fields. So DonorPerfect will allow you to use those fields to populate emails and letters automatically. So it's not just a time saver, it's a tool for engagement. Personalizing your communication will significantly increase the likelihood that your donors will actually open your message and that your content will resonate with them. And again, to put this into perspective, you can consider the statistics that we're seeing on screen here. Email subject lines that are personalized are 26% more likely to be open, right? That's a substantial increase in the chance that your message will be read. Even more impressive, so 88% of marketers in the US, they've reported seeing measurable benefits as a result of personalization. So again, it really underscores why accurate and detailed data entry is so crucial. Every field that you fill out, every note that you make could be the key to crafting a message that truly connects with your donor or your prospects. So whether it's addressing them by a name or referencing their last gift, or really mentioning an event that they attended, these personal touch can make a difference in your donor relationship and ultimately your fundraising success. So as you're entering data in the system, think about how each piece of information could be used to create a more personalized and engaging experience for your donors. It's really about building relationships, not just records. Which brings us to the second step. How should you be entering gift? Again, gift entry isn't just about recording a number. It's also about capturing the full story of each donation. So we're dealing with a variety of gift types, a variety of general ledger, meaning the accounts where the fund will be allocated. So this is, and it really shows that each donation requires a special attention. So we'll go through what we think is essential to a proper and streamlined gift entry process. Next slide. So there are several important considerations to keep in mind when you're doing your gift entry. First, we can think about what coded fields you're tracking. So this These could be things like campaign codes, solicitation codes, or general ledger codes, as I just mentioned. Having a clear system for those will help you with reporting and analyzing the effectiveness of different fundraising efforts. And then you can consider how you'll prioritize your letter templates, right? So different types of gift might require different types of acknowledgement letters. So having a system in place that for this, it really ensures that some donors receive the appropriate timely thanks, right? You don't want your first donor to receive a thank you letter that was designed for someone who's made multiple donations. Make sure that you have a system in place for this. How should you go about electronic versus check payments? Your system for recording these might differ, although Forms Donation and DonorPerfect will have an automatic designation when these gets downloaded. But make sure that you're using the fields for this properly. If you're receiving checks, in DonorPerfect, there is a field called gift type. You'll be able to mention that this is a check and then create reports later on to see, okay, I've received this many amount of checks versus this many amount of electronic donation. Make sure that these fields are populated when you're doing your gift entry. You'll also find the open versus closed pledge. Be clear on how you're actually tracking your pledge fulfillment. When a pledge is a pledge, make sure that there is no, when a pledge is closed, sorry, make sure that there is no positive balance and that the pledge is, because this will make sure that it does not appear on your reports. So in DonorPerfect, this means zeroing out the balance and closing the pledge by putting the payment or monthly payment to no. This will make sure that it no longer appears as unfulfilled in your reports. It's the same with monthly gift, really. These gift needs a special attention to ensure that the gift is actually processing on a monthly basis. And then you'll find the tax deductible gift. Make sure that you're clearly marking what portion of the gift are tax deductible versus what part is not. Especially for things like event tickets or membership dues or gala tickets, as we mentioned in the example earlier. You'll also find the solicitation field. Recording how a gift was solicited can provide valuable insights for your future fundraising strategies. Remember the strategist persona. She'll want to know what solicitation, where that donation came from. How did we get it? And then this brings us to the criteria for thanking and acknowledging your donors. Do you have a clear guideline on your thank you process? Who gets called? Who gets a letter? Do you have any giving levels that trigger a special recognition? You can think about these criteria and implement them as you go along. So remember, again, the goal is not just to record the gift, it's also to capture the information that will help you build a stronger relationship with your donors and inform your fundraising strategies. So each piece of information that you record is a tool really for future engagement and stewardship. So we'll go to the best practice now. So see, it's really for gift acknowledgement, it's really a crucial part of the gift entry process. It can actually make or break your donor relationship. As you consider letter templates, you might have several different templates for various type of gift or donor levels, as I've just mentioned. It's really great for personalization, but it can lead to a common issue. Your donors receiving multiple letters for the same gift. Nobody wants to feel like they're just a number in the system. So a tip here would be to establish a priority order for your letter templates. This means setting up a system so that it knows which template to use when multiple conditions are met. For example, if someone makes a first-time gift that also happened to be a major gift, which letter should they get? Maybe you'll want to actually sign the letter. Maybe you'll want to send a welcome packet. But DonorPerfect will allow you to flag that if you're using the proper automation to do so. So again, having a clear hierarchy, it will really prevent donor confusion and shows that you're paying attention to to your donors. The next one would be the pledge entry. They can be a fantastic way to secure long-term support, but they also require a special sort of handling. And so let's talk about monthly giving. If you're not already encouraging monthly automatic giving for pledges, you might want to consider this. It's a win-win for both you and your donors. For your donors, really, it's a convenience. They don't have to remember to write a check, or you don't have to remember to call them every month. They don't have to remember to make a donation each month. It's easier on their budget because they can spread out their giving over the year rather than making one large donation. Although this could be a strategy as well if it is yours. So for pledges, DonorPerfect will allow you to set up reminders to generate these invoices for upcoming or outstanding payment for these pledges in your system. So you really don't want to be in a situation where you're scrambling at the last minute to remind your donors about their pledge. So if you set up a system of reminders, which again can be done in DonorPerfect, you can stay on top of upcoming payments and quickly generate and send out invoice. So it's really a proactive approach that shows your donors that you're organized and that you value their commitment to your cause. So for outstanding payment, what we recommend doing is, again, reminders can often do the trick. Sometimes donor, they simply forget and they will appreciate the reminder. And you can complement that reminder with other news about the organization or things that you've done in the last months since you've communicated with them. So the key with Pledge really is to make it easy as possible for your donors to fulfill their commitments. So by thinking of offering this automatic monthly giving system, you'll be able to stay on top of those pledge reminders, and you'll be setting up yourself and your donors for success. So these practices not only help you raise more money at the end of the day, but it also contributes to better your donor relationship and improve your retention. So at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You're building those long-lasting relationship that supports your mission year after year. And a pledge is one way to do it. If we go to the recurring gift, what we recommend doing is the following. First of all, have you considered starting a monthly giving program? So this is for not necessarily a pledge, but it would be a donor that comes online, for instance, and decides to give you $15, $20 a month. Do you have a form in place for this? It's really a great way to keep donors connected to your mission year-round. A pro tip, every few months, what we recommend doing is send out some impact updates so that you can show your donors how their ongoing support is making a difference. So it's not just about feel-good stuff in a way. It's really, these updates can serve as a gentle reminders to your donors to check, for instance, if their card information is up to date, right? So they'll see a newsletter about an initiative that you started in the previous month, and then look up their bank account, see that the payment did not go through. They'll call you. They'll be able to see, okay, well, the payment did not go through for the previous month. Maybe I'll call the organization and update my information. You know what it is, like credit card will expire, and sometimes people will forget to update them. So by following that way, you'll be able to keep them engaged and ensure that those donation keeps flowing in smoothly. Again, I'm wondering who's tried this. Probably a lot of you are doing this or have some sort of pledge or monthly giving program in place. I'd be curious to know how it's working for you, if you're experiencing any challenge. If you're a DonorPerfect client, obviously call the support line if you're experiencing any troubles. But if you have any questions about how to set up one, how to set a program like this, feel free to send me a question. And again, we'll do our best to reach out and answer it. The other best practice for special gift types, the first thing would be the matching gift. They're fantastic. It's like getting two gifts for the price of one. But there are some pro tips that we can that we'll give you. If you have a matching gift program in place, what we recommend doing is to create a constituent record, so a record for the actual individual, and one for the company or the organization that is matching that gift. This way, you'll be able to track the total impact and maybe even cultivate them as direct donors down the line. So both the individual and the organization. The next one would be the in-kind donation. These can be a bit tricky. It's like those non-monetary donation like food or clothing or a car. I have seen car program donate a car. This exists. So how do you record that information in DonorPerfect or any CRM for that matter? You can use, what we recommend doing is to use two separate fields to track those donations. The first field would be to categorize the gift. So is it food? Is it clothing? Is it a service? Is it a voucher that you got from someone? So that's what we recommend doing with that first field. And the second field is for the detail, the quantity, for instance. Like, did I receive 20 cans of vegetables? You'll be able to enter the actual quantity of item for that in-kind donation. And for those familiar with DonorPerfect, you'll have the fair market value field that essentially captures the value of the item without adding it to the gift amount when you're doing your gift entry. It really makes things easier when you're doing your reports. It eliminates the actual cash that you receive from the in-kind, but still shows the gift on your report. And the other best practice that we recommend doing is for the DAF. So these famous donor advice fund that are becoming more and more popular. What should you do about those? And how should you think about recording those donations? So it's more or less similar to the other ones. What we recommend doing is to create a record specifically for that donor advice fund and a second record for the individual that gave through that fund. And what you can do, at least in DonorPerfect, is to use the soft credit system. So you'll have the donor advice fund. You can imagine something like the Fidelity bank or any fund really that makes multiple donation for multiple individuals. You'll have that record created. And then you'll be able to create another record, add a soft credit to the individual record, and link those two together. That is what we recommend doing in DonorPerfect to keep track of the DAF's donation, DAF donor advice funds. And remember that each of these gift type is unique, so they all deserve our attention and proper tracking. It's really about making sure that every donor feels valued, no matter how they choose to give. Which brings us to the step number 3. How should you follow up after those gifts are entered in the system? This is where we will show our donors some love, right? And make sure that they know how much their donation, their support means to us. So gift follow-up is really about two main things: recognition and receipting, sorry. So let's break it down. When it comes to gift follow-ups, we've got a lot of tools in our toolbox. The first one really would be the classic ones, which would be letters, emails, and phone calls. Each has its place. Really, letters can feel a bit more formal, a bit more special, while email are more quick, they're more eco-friendly, and you'll find that phone calls are, it really has this personal touch. But there are other ways to thank your donors or follow up with your donors once they've made their donation. You can think of things like welcome packets for new donors. And again, you can set automation in DonorPerfect to be advised of anyone who comes in and has made their first donation. This can be done through smart actions. So welcome packets, again, to echo what I just said, they're a great way to make for a strong first impression. And you're really setting the tone for your relationship with that donor. In DonorPerfect, you'll also have the ability to send video messages. These can be fun, and it's really a personal way to say thank you. Thank you, donor. You'll send a video by email, they'll open it, they'll watch it, and they'll actually relate to the person, the organization. You'll put a human face to the org. And I think it's really valid in this digital age. I actually use it when I reach out to people. Sometimes it's almost quicker than writing up an email. And here's something to think about. Who on your team should be handling the special recognition? And how should you decide to do the schedule for these? It's really worth having a system in place for this. Um, the next step here would be the receiving methods. Are you using different methods for different donors or types of gift? It's really worth considering when a donor might need a different approach. So maybe you'll find yourself with a major donor. Should they get a hand-signed letter with the receipt? While monthly donors, especially in Canada, should they get an annual consolidated receipt at the end of the year, or should we send a receipt every month after a donation comes in? These are discussions that you should be having before even sending out those receipts. Another question that you can have is, when should a record be marked as do not acknowledge? You've probably find yourself at some point with a donor that has requested not to be contacted at all. Um, Make sure that this is recorded in the actual record. And finally, special recognition. Should certain donors get the actual VIP treatment? This could be, again, based on the size of the gift, how much they gave cumulatively over the years, or even non-monetary contribution to your organization. Should they be treated differently? So again, there are multiple ways, multiple consideration to be having before following up with your donors. But once you have that process in place, it's going to be a lot easier to identify, okay, this person donated this much, let's send them this, or let's call them, or let's send them a welcome packet. And we'll get to the best practice right now. So for thanking and receiving, here's what we recommend doing. Again, it can be a fun and creative process. You can turn your thank yous and receipts into something really special that strengthens your donor relationships. And the best part is that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to put a ton of time and effort into it. This can be automated in DonorPerfect. So really, every thank you is an opportunity to connect with your donor and make them feel truly appreciated. So how can we make the most out of it? So the first step here would be personalization. Remember when we talked about the donor details, how you should record the gift? Well, DonorPerfect is a goldmine of donor information, so you should be using it. Again, this can be through adding merge field to your thank you message. You can automatically pull information like donor name, their gift amount, reference their giving history. It's really a small touch that can make a big difference when you're getting that thank you note or that thank you letter. But you shouldn't be stopping here. Think about ways to make your thank yous more engaging with those donors. Can you include a short story about someone who's benefited from your donation, like an impact story, for instance? Or maybe a quick update again on a project that they've supported that come to fruition. This can be done. So this kind of information really helps your donor seize the real impact of their gift. And for receipts, remember that while they need to include a certain information for tax purposes, they can also be more than just a formal document. You can consider adding a heartfelt message to your receipts or even a picture that showcases your work. That's entirely feasible and DonorPerfect. So really, don't be afraid to mix it up. Maybe for certain gifts, you can send a quick video instead of a letter, or perhaps you have a board member made thank you call for gift over a certain amount. There's really a lot of creative ways to send out these thank you notes and receipts even. The key, again, is to make your donor feel seen and appreciated to cultivate this relationship, this positive relationship. Which brings up to the step number 4, tracking the multiple points of contacts with your donors. So it might seem like a lot of detail, but really trust me, it's kind of gold when it comes to building a relationship. we always want to note the contact method. Was it a phone call? Was it an email? Did you meet in a coffee meeting, for instance? It really helps us to understand how your donors prefer to communicate. And then we've got the initials. We've talked about this when inputting notes into the system, but you should keep track of who made the contact and who entered it in the system. Again, it might seem trivial, but it's really helpful if you ever need to follow up on a specific interaction that someone in your organization had with a specific donor. Which brings us to the dates. Really crucial too. We log the input date. So whenever you're making a note, for me, for instance, I would be doing something like the M dash and then the date. The next action, again, speaking of follow-ups, how are we planning the next task? Will it be a thank you note? Will it be another call? Will it be a meeting invitation or simply a coffee meeting? Again, it really helps us to stay on top of your donor engagement strategy. So the summary of contact, again, you've met with someone. What did you talk about? What did you learn about that donor? Did they mention any specific interests or concerns that they have? These are things that you have to keep in mind when you're following up with your donors. So here are some questions to think about. What type of contact activities do you typically record? Are you catching everything again? Are these some sort of interaction? Are there interaction that are slipping through the cracks? Think about this. How do you document each type of contacts? Is there a standard format for it, or does it vary? Think about standardizing this process. The next would be what kind of data should go into the description or that note that you've had with that person. And finally, what reports should you be pulling to track all of these points of contact? Are you using that data effectively? Are you planning that next action date effectively? So again, the goal is to build a comprehensive picture of each donor's journey in your organization. So every interaction becomes this piece of that piece in that puzzle. So make sure that they are recorded, but recorded in a way that makes sense for you and your other team members. So in terms of best practice, what does that mean? Well, we can start with the initials. Again, it's about accountability and follow-up at the end of the day. Always record 2 sets of initials, who actually spoke with the donor and who entered the data in your system. Imagine you're reading a contact note months later and you have a question. So knowing exactly who had this conversation can be incredibly helpful and save time. Plus, it gives credit to the person who actually did the work prior to you. So team members will appreciate this. They really appreciate when their efforts are being recognized, even in small ways like this. And about the next would be about those details. What do you put in those notes? Well, you should record everything that might be relevant to you in the future. So this means, again, did that donor mention that their kid just started college? Note it. If you think this will become an indie, when you're building that relationship, you should note it. You never know, again, what piece of information might help you to personalize your next interaction or your next appeal with your donors. And lastly, follow-ups. Every contact should have a next step. And that next step needs an owner and a date, a due date. So maybe it's sending some additional information to that donor, scheduling a tour, or just a reminder to check in again in a few months. Make sure that there is a person that is tasked to do the task. This can be done again in DonorPerfect. You can create a contact note and schedule it, and then attribute the person who will take action on that note going down the line in a few months. So again, the goal is to build relationship, not just record transactions. Every bit of information that you track is another thread in your tapestry for your donor relationship. Which brings us to the last step that we think is essential in how you should do your data entry, the data integrity maintenance. So this is essentially running reports in the system to figure out, to pinpoint these errors, those records that have multiple errors, and clean them up. So this means that you can be running duplicated reports, so duplicate data reports. How often should you do these? The more often you run duplicate reports, the easier it is to manage those errors. Some organizations do it monthly, others quarterly, um, others will be weekly. So it's really do it as you see fit, but do it. That's you should at least be doing it once a year. And this also brings us to the incomplete address or the no emails in a record. This is crucial if you want to actually reach out to your donor and address them by name. So how often should you be running reports to see the record that has no name or no emails? If you are able to identify those records, flag them and make sure that they are getting corrected going forward. You can also monitor records for removal. It can be a sensitive topic, but it's necessary. Are you actually doing it? Should you keep records of a deceased donor forever in your database, or records that have not interacted with your organization for the past 7 years? Think about what should stay in and what should go out. It's that simple. It's the same with codes. And by codes, I mean the ones that you're using to categorize donors or gift or campaigns, for instance. How often should you be reviewing these codes and marking them outdated if they're or inactive? If you used a code for an event for a gala in 2021, you can make it inactive. Time has passed. We're almost in 2025. So don't keep useless code, not useless. They had a utility at some point, but no more. So you can make them inactive in DonorPerfect by going in code maintenance and marking them as inactive. Exporting data and saving it is another good habit. Do you do it regularly? It's really like taking a picture of an important document. You hope you never need it, but when you do, you'll be glad to have a picture of it. And which brings us to the backups. If it was up to me, I would do a backup a day. This ensures that the data that you've worked on that day is saved. I've seen the organization, unfortunately, not doing backups for years and finding themselves in trouble when something happened. Maybe someone deleted a lot of records by accident, and the last backup that existed was created 2 years ago. So implement this in your data checkup list, and you'll be sure that when something happens, you'll be able to go back to that version of your database that was saved a few days ago or a week ago. So let's go into the best practice. The first thing first would be setting up those user-defined codes. So when you're doing so, think long-term. It's really like planning a city. You'll need to consider future growth and changes. So you can ask yourself when you're creating a code, how we want to use that code down the road. All right, because codes, again, you'll be creating a gala code for your event in 2025. 2 years after this, you don't need it. So you might want to be creating codes that do not have dates in them. Or it could be, it's the same with fields. If you're building user-created fields such as total underscore 2021 underscore fiscal year, you might want to contract that user-defined field to total 20 or just total underscore fiscal year, and then apply a dynamic filter on that user-created field so that you do not end up with a ton of field that you are no longer using in the database. Which really brings us to the standardization. It's really crucial. Having a standardized set of code is like having a common language for your entire organization. It really makes communication clearer and reporting a lot easier. But here's the caveat. It's not enough to just create these standards. You have to actually spread the word. So train your staff on how to use these code correctly. Make sure that the proper code is applied to the proper gift or record or any data that is being interacted with by the user. And don't forget about regular audits. Maybe some codes aren't being used anymore, or they're redundant. Regular audits will help you keep your code list clean. So again, one last pro tip here would be to use that clean data checklist that will be available for all of you at the end. Right? It really helps you to set those clear standards for your nonprofit data management. So again, remember that a good code maintenance isn't just about keeping things clear. It's also about making your data work harder for you. So when your codes are clear, consistent, and current, you'll be able to pull more accurate reports, segment your donor more effectively, and ultimately make better decisions for your organization. And congrats. We truly believe that if you came to this webinar with no data entry process and that you follow these processes, you'll be able to have some clean data in and clean data out. Thank you so much for participating into this presentation. And you'll have my contact information at the bottom here. So if you have any follow-up questions or if you want to learn more about DonorPerfect and other best practices, feel free to send me an email and I'll be able to follow up as soon as possible with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Before we jump into the Q&A portion, I would just like to note that we are going to extend the webinar by 10 minutes. As a reminder, we are recording today's session, and if you have to leave at the hour mark, you will still be able to watch the remainder of the webinar tomorrow. Okay, so let's just jump back into the Q&A session. David, there are just a few questions here that we'll address. So how frequently should the data cleaning and procedural review process be done?
So that's a very good question. Again, I think I touched it on the last slide, but you should do it. It really depends from organization to organization, but it could be on a weekly or on a monthly basis. It's really to make sure that the data stays clean and consistent. It's one thing to have a well-defined data entry process in place. Things will slip through the cracks. So if you do this review on a monthly basis, at least on a monthly basis, you should be good for success here. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the next question, what do you see as the main benefit of having this tool?
Having this tool as in the process or the CRM?
The data checklist and the CRM, I believe they're referring to.
No worries. So having this process in place, again, we just explored how incorrect data entry will cause issues down the line. So having a clear and well-defined process will allow you to really make the most out of your data, especially when it comes to communication with your donors, or simply, again, we've touched the monthly giving program. You'll be able to have correct information and base your decision on correct information. So having this, if you're working in a database, is crucial. Everyone that interacts with a database in some way should follow at least some sort of procedure, for sure.
Thank you very much, David. And are there any other best practices that you can think of with regards to DonorPerfect or other similar CRM tools for data cleaning?
Of course, another good practice would be to run reports. When I used to be in the support team, I was helping my clients to run their reports specifically to find out who's missing information in a very crucial field that they're using. So running reports would be an essential way to see what's missing in your database, but also a way to plan ahead. To plan what you should be changing on your form, for instance. If you realize that every record that you're getting is missing some sort of information, and that every record that where you're noticing this comes from a specific online form, you'll be able to figure out which form and then correct the data entry process on that specific form. So there are multiple ways. Again, if you're interested in knowing more, you can always contact us, and we'll be able to discuss that with you for sure.
Thank you for sharing these insights, David. And on behalf of Charity Village, we would like you to thank you for presenting such an informative webinar. And just, do you happen to have any final comments before we sign off today for the audience?
One final comment would be if you're working, and this clean data checklist, really it's valid for not only DonorPerfect, but any sorts of database system. Don't be afraid to use it. It can be intimidating at first, but I would highly recommend using it, especially if you do not have a clear process in place. Trust me, it will change your life. It will make things easier down the road. So yeah, don't be afraid to use it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, David. And everyone can see David's contact information on the screen. Just as a reminder as well, everyone will receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. Please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. You should see a survey link pop up right here in Zoom following the session as well. On behalf of Charity Village, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for our next free webinar, Compensation in the Nonprofit Sector, Highlights from the 2024 Canadian Nonprofit Sector Salary and Benefits Report. You can find more information on this and all of our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.